The Broken Prodigy. The emergency lights cast long shadows across the research facility's main laboratory, their pulsing red glow reflecting off Dr. Elena Rodriguez's carbon fiber prosthetic hand. Each subtle movement created a soft, whirring sound, a reminder of everything she had lost and everything she had become. Her fingers traced the holographic interface, lines of complex quantum algorithms dancing beneath her touch. Around her, a team of 11 researchers worked in absolute silence, their backgrounds as fractured and unlikely as the mission they'd been entrusted with. To the outside world, they were ghosts, survivors, outcasts. Dr. Rodriguez wasn't just a scientist. She was a living testament to humanity's ability to rebuild from absolute destruction. The global conflict of 2053 had taken her original team, her family, and most of her right arm. But it hadn't taken her spirit. "System diagnostic complete," announced Marcus Chen, a former cybersecurity specialist who had spent 5 years in military prison for an act of digital rebellion that had ultimately saved millions. His neural implant flickered with a series of complex computational patterns as he spoke. Elena nodded, her dark eyes reflecting a combination of determination and barely contained excitement. The prototype they were developing wasn't just a weapon. It was something far more revolutionary. A living technology that blurred the line between machine and consciousness, between human potential and pure innovation. "Quantum resonance at 87.3%, muttered Dr. Aisha Okonkwo, her fingers dancing across multiple holographic displays. Once a brilliant researcher ostracized for her radical theories on adaptive artificial intelligence, she now represented the cutting edge of human technological thinking. The team was a mosaic of broken dreams and impossible hopes. There was Rodriguez, the trauma surgeon turned quantum physicist; Chen, the digital outlaw; Okonkwo, the AI theorist; and others, each carrying scars, each possessing a unique brilliance that traditional systems had once rejected. Their current project was both their redemption and humanity's last hope. A technological breakthrough so profound it could change the very nature of human survival. Not just a weapon, but a living system that could adapt, learn, and fundamentally transform how humanity would face potential extinction. "We're close," Elena whispered, more to herself than to her team. Her prosthetic hand clenched involuntarily, a muscle memory from countless hours of rehabilitation and determination. The facility itself was a marvel of hidden engineering. Located deep beneath the Andes Mountains, it was invisible to satellite imaging, shielded by advanced quantum camouflage technologies. Years of global conflict had taught humanity the value of invisibility, of preparation beyond traditional military thinking. A soft alarm broke the concentration. Marcus looked up, his neural implant already processing incoming data streams. "Anomalous signal detected," he announced. "External communication bandwidth. It's not like anything in our current database." Dr. Okonkwo's hands moved with lightning speed, her own neural interfaces spinning complex defensive algorithms, routing through quantum encryption. She responded, her voice calm despite the potential threat. Elena approached, her prosthetic hand now fully extended, sensors scanning the incoming data with superhuman precision. What they were building was more than a weapon. It was a message, a declaration that humanity was no longer a species to be overlooked or conquered. "Prepare full system integration," she commanded, her voice carrying the weight of everything they had lost and everything they were about to become. The Broken Prodigy and her team of outcasts were ready. Humanity's next evolution was about to begin. The Arrogant Invasion. Commander Krell of the Zin-Arek hegemony studied the holographic representation of Earth with a mixture of contempt and clinical detachment. His six-fingered hand brushed against the translucent display, zooming into the planet's major population centers. Primitive cities, fractured political systems, technological infrastructure that barely qualified as advanced by galactic standards. Another routine subjugation. He muttered to his second-in-command, Sub-Commander Vrax. The bridge of the massive dreadnought Eternal Dominance hummed with the quiet efficiency of a military machine that had conquered hundreds of civilizations. Holographic displays tracked everything from planetary atmospheric composition to primitive communication networks. Each screen told a story of impending conquest. Vrax, more cautious by nature, examined the data more closely. The human communication patterns are unusual, he observed, his translucent membrane-like eyes blinking in a complex rhythm. There's an underlying complexity we haven't seen in previous pre-spaceflight civilizations. Krell scoffed. Complexity. They're a species that still resolves conflicts with physical violence. Look at their history. Constant wars, environmental destruction, social upheaval. They're more likely to destroy themselves before we even arrive. What Krell didn't know was that a low-ranking human communication specialist named David Rice was about to change everything. In a small, unremarkable communication center buried deep within a repurposed military bunker in the Chilean desert, Rice watched the alien signals with a mixture of professional calm and inner excitement. He wasn't just listening. He was actively engaging in what might be the most important act of miscommunication in human history. Slight frequency modulation, he whispered to himself, his fingers dancing across quantum encryption interfaces that would have looked like gibberish to any outside observer. What appeared to be a standard translation protocol was actually an elaborate system of deliberate mistranslation. Each alien communication was subtly altered, not enough to be immediately noticeable, but sufficient to plant seeds of confusion and miscalculation. On the Eternal Dominance, Sub-Commander Vrax frowned. Commander, I'm detecting anomalies in our communication protocols. The human response patterns don't match our predictive models. Krell's contempt was absolute. Of course they don't. They're an inferior species desperately trying to appear significant. The invasion plan was meticulously crafted. 10,000 ships. Technological superiority that had crushed civilizations far more advanced than humanity. Planetary subjugation protocols that had been refined over millennia. The Xen-Eric hegemony didn't just conquer. They systematically dismantled and repurposed entire species. What they didn't understand was that humanity had been preparing for this moment for decades. Every war, every technological breakthrough, every moment of global conflict had been a training ground. David Rice continued his delicate dance of miscommunication, introducing subtle inconsistencies that would later bloom into massive strategic advantages. A word here, a frequency modulation there. Each tiny adjustment was a seed of doubt, a whisper of uncertainty. 10 minutes to initial contact, announced the ship's computational system in the alien language. On Earth, a network of hidden facilities began to hum with potential. The broken prodigies in their mountain laboratory. Military strategists in underground command centers. Researchers who had spent lifetimes studying alien psychology. Commander Krell smiled, believing victory was already assured. He was terribly, catastrophically wrong. The technological symphony. The U.S. Prometheus materialized at the edge of the solar system like a living dream. Part machine, part organism, entirely impossible. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge, her neural interfaces synchronizing with the ship's consciousness in a dance of technological symbiosis. The Prometheus wasn't just a vessel. It was a living ecosystem that breathed, adapted, and thought alongside its crew. Neural synchronization at 98.6%, announced Lieutenant Michael Rodriguez, his voice a calm counterpoint to the ship's subtle vibrations. Around him, holographic displays shifted and transformed, each interface responding to unspoken thoughts, anticipating needs before they could be articulated. The ship's core was a marvel that would have been incomprehensible to traditional engineering. Constructed from adaptive nanomaterials that could restructure themselves instantaneously, the Prometheus could transform from a research vessel to a weapon of unprecedented complexity in milliseconds. But more than that, it carried something revolutionary: the neural patterns of volunteers who had died protecting Earth. Each crew member felt it, the whispers of those who came before, memories embedded in the ship's quantum neural network, a collective consciousness that was both a memorial and a weapon. Incoming transmission, the ship's AI announced. Its voice was neither fully mechanical nor fully human, a perfect blend that carried the emotional depth of its human creators and the precision of advanced computation. The first alien scout ships approached, their sensor arrays probing the Prometheus with a mixture of curiosity and growing confusion. Traditional scanning methods revealed nothing. The ship seemed to shimmer between states of existence, defying every known principle of spacecraft design. Captain Chen closed her eyes, synchronizing more deeply with the ship. The Prometheus was an extension of human creativity, of their ability to turn trauma into innovation. Each system told a story. The quantum shield generator was designed by a researcher who lost her family in the global conflicts. The adaptive weapons system was conceptualized by veterans who understood the true cost of war. "They're trying to categorize us," the ship's eye observed, a hint of amusement in its tone. "They cannot comprehend what they're seeing." Lieutenant Rodriguez's hands moved across the interface, not so much controlling the ship as conversing with it. "Adaptive response protocol," he murmured. The ship's exterior began to subtly shift, its nanomaterial hull creating patterns that were both beautiful and terrifying, a visual language that spoke of potential rather than threat. The alien scout ships hesitated. This was more than a technological marvel. It was a statement. Humanity was not just surviving. They were redefining the very concept of existence. "Quantum resonance at maximum," announced the ship's eye. "Memory banks integrating. Collective experience synchronizing. The memories of fallen soldiers, of scientists who died pushing the boundaries of knowledge, of ordinary people who refused to be conquered. They all lived within the Prometheus. Each neural pattern was a thread in a larger tapestry of human resilience." Captain Chen opened her eyes. "Show them who we are," she whispered. The Prometheus began to sing, not with sound, but with a complex symphony of quantum frequencies, electromagnetic pulses, and adaptive visual patterns, a communication that was simultaneously a weapon, a research output, a work of art, and a profound declaration of human potential. The alien scouts fell silent, their sensors overwhelmed by something they could neither understand nor defend against. Humanity had arrived, and nothing would ever be the same. Psychological warfare unleashed. The first shot of the battle was never fired. It was whispered. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched from the quantum communication hub as the most sophisticated psychological warfare system in human history began its silent assault. The Empathetic Disruption Network, EDN, was more than a weapon. It was a living, breathing ecosystem of cognitive manipulation. Zynerak soldier Kraltok felt it first, a subtle dissonance in his neural implants. Memories that weren't quite his own began to seep through the edges of his consciousness. The battle formations that had conquered 100 civilizations suddenly felt uncertain. Communication anomaly detected. His squad's tactical AI reported, its voice becoming increasingly fragmented. Integrity compromised. What the aliens didn't understand was that humanity had spent decades studying the psychology of conflict. Every war, every cultural clash, every moment of global tension had been a training ground for this moment. The EDN didn't just jam communications, it reinterpreted them. Fragments of personal histories, carefully extracted and algorithmically refined, began to infiltrate the alien communication networks, a memory of a mother's sacrifice, the pain of a lost comrade, the moment of doubt that comes before every act of violence. In the command center of the Eternal Dominance, Sub-Commander Vrax watched in growing horror as his soldiers began to hesitate. "It's impossible," he muttered, his translation implants struggling to process what was happening. The human communication wasn't just a signal. It was a living, breathing entity that understood the deepest fears of the Zynerak. Kraltok's hands trembled. The invasion protocols that had been hardwired into his neural system for decades suddenly felt wrong. He saw the faces of the civilizations his people had conquered. saw them not as statistics, but as individual lives. Dr. Rodriguez's fingers danced across quantum interfaces that looked more like abstract art than military technology. Each movement was a careful calibration of emotional frequencies, psychological triggers, and empathetic resonance. Target psychological cohesion at 62%, announced Marcus Chen, his neural implant parsing complex emotional algorithms. Breakdown of collective military identity proceeding faster than projected. It wasn't just about breaking communication, it was about breaking understanding. Some of the alien soldiers began to communicate with each other in ways their commanders had never anticipated, sharing doubts, questioning the very nature of their invasion. The EDN had introduced something far more dangerous than a traditional weapon. It had introduced empathy. "We're experiencing something unprecedented," Vrax reported to Commander Krell, his voice barely a whisper. "The humans are not fighting us. They're making us fight ourselves." On the Prometheus, Captain Sarah Chen watched the psychological battlefield unfold. This was warfare beyond physical conflict, a battle fought in the realm of consciousness, of shared experience, of fundamental understanding. A Xen-Eric communications officer suddenly stood up during a critical moment of the invasion, throwing down his weapons. "I cannot continue," he announced to his stunned commanders. "I see now. The most terrifying weapon was not destruction. It was understanding." Humanity had found a way to fight a war without firing a single traditional shot. They had turned empathy into a strategic advantage, psychological complexity into a shield more powerful than any physical defense. Commander Krell's face showed something he had never experienced before. Doubt. The modular revolution. The battlefield was alive. Lieutenant Area Chen watched in real time as the U.S. horizon transformed. What had moments ago been a medical research vessel was now becoming something entirely different. A weapon, a communication hub, a defensive stronghold, all within the span of a few heartbeats. Modular technology was humanity's greatest invention, not just a technological breakthrough, but a philosophy of existence. Adaptive configuration initiated, the ship's AI announced. Its voice carried the collective memories of thousands of human experiences, each transformation a story, each reconfiguration a testament to human adaptability. The alien fleet watched in growing terror, their massive, specialized vessels, each designed for a single, precise purpose, seemed suddenly obsolete. The human ships moved like living organisms, their nanomolecular structures shifting, reorganizing, becoming whatever the moment demanded. A medical bay could become a precision strike platform in milliseconds. A research module could transform into a communication jamming system faster than an enemy could comprehend. Weapon systems weren't just built, they were born, adapted, evolved. Kraltak, the Xen-Eric soldier who had experienced the psychological warfare, watched from a captured observation deck. His understanding of warfare was being dismantled in real time. "It's not just a ship," he whispered to himself. "It's a living system." Lieutenant Chen's neural interface pulsed with 1,000 potential configurations. Each option was a story, a potential solution, a moment of human creativity. The ship responded to her thoughts not as a machine, but as a partner. "Incoming asteroid field," the AI reported. "Defensive reconfiguration or scientific investigation." Area smiled. "Both." The horizon's exterior began to shift. Sensor arrays extended like mechanical tendrils. Defensive shields transformed into research platforms. Weapon systems became collection mechanisms for geological samples. It was destruction and creation, defense and exploration, all happening simultaneously. The alien commanders were paralyzed. Their tactical algorithms, developed over millennia of conquest, couldn't process what they were seeing. How do you fight an enemy whose very nature is change? Dr. Elena Rodriguez, watching from the quantum communication hub, understood the deeper meaning. This wasn't just about technology. It was about the fundamental human ability to adapt, to transform, to refuse categorization. "We're not just changing ships," she murmured to Marcus Chen. "We're changing the entire concept of conflict." The Zin-Eric fleet's specialized vessels looked suddenly primitive. A ship for war, a ship for research, a ship for medical support. Rigid, inflexible, predictable. The human vessels were none of these things, and all of these things. Molecular restructuring at 99.7%, a Horizons AI announced. Complete adaptive configuration achieved. What had been a medical vessel was now a complex system that could be a weapon, a research station, a defensive platform, and a communication hub, all at the same time. The boundaries between purpose, between potential, had been completely dissolved. Kreltok understood then what made humans different. It wasn't just their technology. It was their refusal to be defined by limitations. The modular revolution was more than a technological breakthrough. It was a declaration of human potential. The diplomatic nightmare. The negotiation chamber was a masterpiece of controlled chaos. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez stood at the center of a holographic space that defied every traditional concept of diplomatic engagement. Behind her, a diverse team that looked more like a collection of survivors than a standard diplomatic corps. Each member carefully selected not for their political connections, but for their extraordinary stories of resilience. Commander Krell of the Zin-Eric hegemony found himself completely off balance. This was not the submission he had expected. This was something else entirely. "We're not here to conquer," Elena began, her prosthetic hand subtly glowing with quantum communication interfaces. "We're here to redefine what civilization means." To the left of Elena stood Kraltok, the Zin-Eric soldier who had broken ranks during the psychological warfare. Next to him, Maria Santos, a climate refugee who had helped rebuild 3 continents. Behind them, representatives from civilizations previously conquered by the Zin-Eric, each with their own story of survival. The holographic space shifted. Not just a meeting room, but a living narrative space that could reconstruct historical moments, display complex data streams, and communicate on levels far beyond traditional language. "Your invasion was predicated on a fundamental misunderstanding," Elena continued. Her voice carried the weight of humanity's collective experience. "Civilization is not about conquest. It's about adaptation." Krell's translation implants struggled. The language wasn't just words. It was a complex matrix of emotional context, historical understanding, and potential futures. Marcus Chen, working the quantum communication interfaces, was doing something unprecedented. The diplomatic communication wasn't just an exchange of words, but a living system that could simultaneously translate, analyze, and recontextualize every statement. "We're offering something beyond your current understanding," Elena explained. "Not submission, not conquest, but a fundamental reimagining of interstellar relationships." The holographic space began to fill with stories. Not just human stories, but stories from every civilization the Zin-Eric had conquered. Personal narratives that transformed abstract concepts of oppression into deeply personal experiences of loss, resilience, and hope. Kraltok stepped forward. His very presence was a violation of Zin-Eric military protocol. A soldier speaking during diplomatic negotiations. Unthinkable. "We have been wrong," he said, his voice carrying the weight of personal transformation. "Conquest is not strength. Understanding is." The diplomatic team had brought something more powerful than weapons. They had brought a comprehensive view of existence that challenged every fundamental assumption of galactic civilization. Dr. Aisha Okonkwo began to explain their proposal. It wasn't just a treaty. It was a comprehensive framework for interstellar cooperation that treated every civilization as a potential partner, not a potential resource. The holographic space filled with potential scenarios, economic models, cultural exchanges, technological collaborations. Each projection was a living, breathing possibility that showed how different species could not just coexist, but truly collaborate. Commander Krell realized something terrifying. Humanity wasn't asking to be accepted. They were offering to help reimagine everything. "We don't want your submission," Elena said softly. "We want your potential." The diplomatic nightmare was just beginning, and nothing would ever be the same. The unspoken potential. Silence was humanity's most powerful weapon. In the weeks following the diplomatic encounter, entire galactic civilizations held their collective breath. The Xin-Arac hegemony and other interstellar powers found themselves paralyzed by something far more terrifying than an active threat: pure, unbridled potential. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood in the observation deck of the quantum research facility, watching holographic projections that were equal parts scientific marvel and strategic masterpiece. Around her, a network of researchers who represented humanity's most profound contradiction: those who had been broken by the world, and those who had learned to rebuild it. "We're not showing them everything," Marcus Chen murmured, his neural interfaces parsing complex probabilistic scenarios. "We're showing them just enough to make them understand everything is possible." It was a psychological strategy beyond traditional warfare. Humanity had weaponized uncertainty. The quantum displays flickered with glimpses of technologies that defied comprehension. Adaptive energy systems that could restructure entire planetary ecosystems. Communication networks that could potentially link minds across light years. Quantum computational systems that blurred the line between biological and technological intelligence. But they showed only fragments, tantalizing hints of capabilities that made other civilizations simultaneously terrified and mesmerized. Krultak, now a liaison between humanity and the Xin-Arac, understood the strategy better than most. "You're not threatening," he explained to his former commanders. "You're promising." Each leaked technological concept was a carefully crafted message. A research paper here, a partial patent there. Fragments of capabilities that suggested humanity could solve problems other civilizations had struggled with for millennia. Planetary restoration. Humanity had prototypes. Faster-than-light communication. Experimental networks already existed. Adaptive medical technologies that could potentially reverse genetic damage. Just another research project. The galactic community found itself in a state of perpetual anticipation. What could humans do? What wouldn't they do? The uncertainty was the weapon. "We're rewriting the entire concept of potential," Dr. Aisha Okonkwo said, her eyes reflecting complex holographic projections, "not through conquest, through possibility." Diplomatic channels became a complex dance. Humanity offered collaborative research opportunities that were simultaneously open and mysterious. "Join us," the offers suggested, "but understand that you can never fully comprehend what we might become." The U.S. Prometheus and other advanced vessels became floating emblems of this strategy. Occasionally visible, partially understood, completely unpredictable. Alien civilizations began to change their approach to humanity. No longer was this a species to be conquered or controlled. They were a variable, an unknown, a potential future that could not be predicted or contained. "We're not a threat," Elena would say in diplomatic meetings. "We're an invitation to reimagine everything." Some galactic historians would later call this the most sophisticated form of deterrence in known history. Humanity didn't need to prove its strength. It only needed to suggest its potential. The unspoken message was clear. We could destroy you. We could save you. We could transform everything. And we might do any of those things, or none of them. Uncertainty became humanity's ultimate strategic advantage. Legacy of the Unbroken. 50 years after the invasion that never truly was, young Zora listened to her grandmother's stories about the humans. The holographic classroom shimmered with living memories, not just historical records, but emotional landscapes that told a story beyond simple facts. Zora's grandmother, Kira, had been one of the first Xin-Arac diplomats to truly understand humanity. "They didn't conquer us," Kira explained, her holographic form shifting with subtle emotional nuances. "They transformed us." The classroom was a living testament to that transformation. Students from a dozen different species sat together, not as conquered populations, but as collaborative learners. The very concept of civilization had been rewritten. Projected memories danced around them. Images of Dr. Elena Rodriguez, now a legendary figure across multiple star systems. The U.S. Prometheus, which had become a traveling university of interstellar understanding. Moments of human history that showed not just technological triumph, but profound emotional resilience. A young human student, Maya, sat next to Zara. Their neural interfaces allowed for a depth of communication that transcended traditional language. Shared emotions, collective understanding. A connection that would have been impossible before humanity's intervention. My great-grandmother was a climate refugee. Maya shared, her thoughts flowing directly into the collective classroom consciousness. She helped rebuild entire continents before we even understood space travel. The lesson wasn't about conquest. It was about survival. About transformation. Kira's holographic form displayed a series of historical moments. The global conflict of 2053. The first alien contact. The psychological warfare that wasn't about destruction, but understanding. The modular technologies that had redefined the very concept of adaptive systems. Humanity's greatest weapon, Kira explained, was never their technology. It was their ability to see potential in what others saw as broken. The classroom itself was a marvel of adaptive learning. Walls that could become windows into different historical moments. Interfaces that responded to emotional states as much as intellectual queries. A learning environment that was alive, responsive, collaborative. Outside the window, a view of a restored planetary ecosystem. A joint project that had begun with human restoration technologies. What was once a devastated world now thrived, a living testament to collaborative potential. Maya and Zara's neural interfaces began to sync, sharing a moment of collective understanding. They weren't just learning history. They were experiencing it. The humans didn't just save civilizations, Kira continued. They showed us how to save ourselves. Historical records showed how humanity had transformed galactic politics not through military might, but through a profound understanding of collective potential. They had introduced concepts of adaptive governance, collaborative research, and emotional intelligence that had fundamentally reshaped interstellar relationships. The lesson reached its climax. A holographic reconstruction of the first diplomatic encounter, not as a moment of tension, but as a moment of profound connection. Commander Krell's initial arrogance transforming into understanding. The human delegation not as conquerors, but as invitations to reimagine everything. We are all broken, Kira said, her holographic form embracing the entire classroom. And in our brokenness, we find our greatest strength. For Zara and Maya, for their entire generation, the human legacy was not a story of conquest. It was a story of possibility.